What's going on, boys? It is day number 9 of reading through the book of Matthew. Today we are looking at part 2 of our series that we have been doing over the past couple of days. So for today, we're looking at the last 3 topics in Matthew 9, which talks about Jesus raising a dead girl and healing a sick woman, and him healing 2 blind men and healing a man who could not speak, and then finally closing out with a topic called "The Workers Are Few." So we're continuing on as Jesus is going through his ministry, and he's going through these towns and villages, and he's preaching in synagogues and in places that are drawing a lot of crowds, and people are really starting to get really connected to the fact that, this man that is going around is really preaching some good news and, is doing all these miracles. And so for the first 2 sections, we're going to be looking at, situations where Jesus is in these areas with a lot of people, and he goes and he heals these people. So in the first one we'll look at is where Jesus heals a sick woman. So this is verse 20 through 22. This is what happens. So Jesus is walking in the streets, and one thing that really kind of helped me to understand this was in an episode of The Chosen, where it's being depicted that Jesus is walking in this alley with all these people around him trying to get close to him, and he's being guided by his disciples. And this woman who is sick comes up behind him and touches his garment. So this is verse 20 through 22. It says, "Just then, a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, 'If only I touch his cloak, I will be healed.' Jesus turned and saw her. 'Take heart, daughter,' he said. 'Your faith has healed you.' And the woman was healed at that moment." So this woman had never encountered Jesus before. She knew when she saw him that if she could just get a piece of Jesus, that she would be healed. And what she came to the realization of was, it wasn't that she, touched his cloak and that she was healed. It was the fact that she had faith that Jesus would heal her, even though, she didn't know Jesus at the time, but Jesus knew who she was. She sought Jesus out. She sought Christ out because she knew that Christ was the Messiah, and he was the one that had the power to do it. He was the Son of God. He had the power from God himself on the earth. And so one thing that I wrote down is that faith has power to heal any wound. So I think this applies more to mental wounds than it does physical wounds. It's not to say that I don't think physical wounds in today's modern world can be healed by Christ and by miracles, but more or less it's those mental wounds. It's more mental battles that we face in this world today, mental things we're facing, whether it's, a certain addiction that we may have had, or things that we've been falling into, or an argument we have with somebody, or a certain feeling that we have towards somebody. That's the thing that we are really battling most today, and that's the thing that we are trying to seek Christ for. Is that Christ, please help me with this situation, help me to, approach this person in a better way, or help me with my, my life, with my job, and I think we have to remember that, it is through faith, and faith is over everything else. Faith in God, trust in God, believing in God, all of those have to work together to be able to get us to where we need to be, to get us to the point where Christ is going to be with us, and he's going to, turn us in a way. Christ hears everything we do. He hears everything that we plead, everything that we say, but it's only through faith. Where we say, regardless of the situation, regardless of the answer that I get, even if it's not one that I asked for, I know that God's going to answer me. So I think it's interesting how, this kind of applies to this next section. It applies, really to kind of help us understand the power of Christ. So, and this next one, it's kind of interesting what happens here. Jesus is being led by one of the synagogue leaders to his house. And he's going to this young girl who has been told to Jesus that she's passed away. And so Jesus gets to this house, and verse 24 says, he said to these people who were playing these pipes, it was almost like a funeral that they were doing, and he said, "Go away, the girl is not dead, but asleep." Now, I just want to say that this particular verse kind of, halted me in my tracks a little bit, just because, the way that it's said, it just I didn't really comply with it at first. And, I did some kind of rereading of it, and I did a search of it. And the one thing that I was able to come to understanding is that Christ has power over death. Christ has the ability to do the impossible. So this is Jesus signifying that, he was the Son of God. He was the Messiah, that, he had the power to do anything. There was no challenge or no obstacle that could be in his way, not even death. Nothing could stop him from healing. Nothing could stop him from saving the people. We looked at yesterday when Jesus was at Matthew's house, and some of the leaders, the Pharisees, when they come, they asked him about all this, and Jesus told him, he's like, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. And Jesus is literally going, he says, this girl, she may not be, she may appear to look dead. She's not. Like, she's sick and she needs healing. That's why I'm here. Jesus is the healthcare provider. He is the doctor of the world that we all need. We all need it. This sickness that we call sin, this disease that affects every single person, we all know that Jesus is the only one that can be that medicine to heal us from that sin. And that's exactly what Jesus says here to these people. And he goes up to this room where this girl is, and he awakens this girl. He gets up and he grabs her hand, and she awakes from her sleep, and she continues on with her life. And so I think it's interesting that, when we have faith, that God can do the impossible. So we think that, when something happens, that's just the way it is. And maybe in some cases, that's just the way God's plan was. But in other cases, I think it can be more of an opportunity. It can be an opportunity for us to say, okay, well, this is, what it has come to, God, I don't understand what I don't understand why this is the way it is right now. I was like, but, I want to pray to you. I want to, ask that you would help me to understand, why this is happening, why, people have to suffer, why people have to do this, and why things are the way they are. And so I think the best way to look at this is to look at how faith isn't about the things that we see with our own eyes. While yes, we see a lot of things where we see the creations that God has made, from the sky to the grass to the animals to the ocean to the mountains to the valleys. That's great. But true faith and true love and true, trust in God can't be seen with the human eye. So there's an encounter that Jesus has with these two blind men. So Jesus is still continuing on his ministry, and he's going along these villages. And what's interesting is that, because these two men are blind, but they call out to him. They said, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." They can't even see Jesus. They can't see him. They are blind, but they know. They trust. They have a feeling. Where's that feeling coming from? From the Spirit. The power of God has come upon these two men. And so in verse 28 through 31, it says, when he had gone indoors, this is Jesus going inside, the blind men came to him and asked him. And Jesus asked them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" "Yes, Lord," they replied. Then he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their sight was restored. Jesus warned them sternly, "See that no one knows about this." When they went out and spread the news about him all over the region. So dedication to Christ will have great outcomes. I think in other ways of putting it, sometimes we have to rely on other instincts and rely on other pieces of advice and pieces of kind of other roots to make us stronger. And sometimes we have to, remove this blindfold that is on us to really see what Christ is doing for us. So again, to kind of clarify, faith in God is not seen by the human eye. I think, a better way to put that is that faith is through your heart. Faith is through what you are really rooting yourself in, because that's the part that not a lot of people can see. And it can be difficult for us to say, well, how is it that I can, have faith in God, yet I can't see it? That's where the trust comes in. That's where the faith comes into play. The faith is not all about what you can see. One movie quote that I think about is from the movie The Polar Express, of all movies, and it goes like this: believing is seeing. Seeing, everybody thinks that seeing is believing. People always will say, well, if God's so real, why can't I see him? Why can't I see all these things? If Christ was really real, why can't I see him? And the fact of the matter is that we can. We see him through other people. We see him through actions. We see him through emotions and feelings. It's not all about the things we see with our eyes. It's about the things that we see with our souls, with our spirit. That is what we need to be looking at God with our souls and with our spirit. We need to give in. Believing is seeing. And so I love how this kind of ties into this last section in chapter 9 here, where Jesus is still continuing on his ministry. He's going through a lot of different towns and speaking in these synagogues, and he's telling about the kingdom of God that is coming. And I love what happens here in verse 36 through 38 to kind of close out. He says, and this is what it says here. It says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. So we all need a leading towards what good has already been planted, to what God has already planted. So a lot of us think that, we ask God for things, but I think the way that it really is that God has already planted things in us. We ask God for more of something, but we fail to realize that it's already there. We already have everything that we need. We have all the materials, all the tools, all the resources, everything that we could ever want is already given to us. All we have to do is rely on God, trust him, and he will use those things within us to build us stronger. It's interesting that, he sees all these people, and, he gives this simile which says, like sheep without a shepherd. I was at service this morning for church, and one of the things that the pastor was talking about is that, we are the sheep. Jesus is the true shepherd. He's the good shepherd. We are sheep. We are like wandering sheep that are wandering around thinking that, one way is right. We go up this hill just to fall back down. We don't know what to do. We're clueless. We need someone to hurt us, someone to show us the way, someone to guide us. We need to surround ourselves with other people, other sheep, to make us stronger, to build us into who we're meant to be. We need to look for a shepherd to live by, for a particular thing that we can stand by and we can grow ourselves with. And that person is Christ. He has come, showed us the ways to live, and given us an opportunity. So for any of us, I think if we have been really rooting ourselves in, I think that it would be really well for us to go encourage others. Because when we encourage others, not only does it better their lives, but it betters ours as well. Because it grows us closer to God. It brings us closer to the one who created us, because that's what he intended us for to do. And so that is today's word. I'm going to go ahead and read today's daily prayer. Today is November 9th. Today's title is called Reflection of You. We're in the book of Psalms, chapter 57, verse 10, which says, your love is so extravagant, it reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness is so astonishing, it stretches to the sky. You amaze me, God, when I ponder your ways, your interaction with your creation, and your continued care for it. I am so thankful that I know you. I pray that you would help me to wake each day reminded of your greatness. Give me your eyes for your creation. Help me to love all with love like yours. Develop my heart to demonstrate the same character you have to others. I want to be faithful to you as you are to me. When people see me, I hope they see some of you. So, the biggest question that we should ask ourselves, and something that I, will fall back to sometimes, is that, do people see Christ in you? Are you mirroring Christ? If someone were to look at you, are they being brought closer to Christ? When you talk to somebody, have a conversation with, are they being brought closer to Christ? Are you leading them and guiding them towards the one who can save, who can answer questions, who can deliver us from the evil one? And that answer can only be given between you and God. And we all need someone to lead us. And so if we feel that we need some assistance, well, there is someone that is willing to. And so that is today's word. I hope that you guys have had a great Sunday, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out, boys.